Hello everyone, welcome back to JavaMentor.net, and in today's video we will learn how to connect to SQL database from Java using JDBC. So first thing to understand, currently we have database started on our PC and we also have some Java application which is not running currently, as you can see, but our database is running, so we can execute queries and it will return some result. Java application is totally independent from SQL and SQL is independent from Java. Uh, Database can even be on some other machine. So I can start a database at some machine in Germany and then I can connect to that database using Java from my computer. I'm talking this because we want to connect to database and we need to give the URL of the database. And here is how URL look like. So we want to connect using JDBC, which is Java Database Connection. We want to connect to PostgreSQL. Our database is located on our computer, which localhost is indicating, and we want on this PostgreSQL you can have multiple databases, and we want to go exactly to this Java Mentor database. Okay, user for that database is Postgres, and password is, I set the password when we installed Postgres. You also set that password, so it should be the same here. User should be the same for you because we didn't change anything at the beginning. Okay, those are three things: URL, user, and password. Now we first need to establish a connection to our database. In the same fashion like when you're playing video game which is online, let's say Dota or Counter-Strike or something like that, and you click start game, usually there is some message saying connecting to the server. So we want to connect to our database, and that's done using driver manager, and then there is a static method get connection, right? And you need to pass URL. URL is this one, right? You need to pass user and password. User and password. Okay. Now something is red here. It says, oh, okay, unhandled exception. So we need to surround with try catch, correct? Awesome. We have our connection, right? And now with this connection, what we can do, we can close connection, we can, let's say, get schema of our database and some similar things. But if you take a look at this, method, none of them, at least majority of them, doesn't have anything to do with SQL queries. This one has something to do with SQL, but all of other things are meant for connection itself. So this connection object has connection class has methods related to connection itself. We need something else to be able to execute SQL queries, and that something else is statement. So create statement. We need to create statement under this connection, and then on that statement we can say execute query, and we can go with, let's say, select star from book. This is our SQL query, right? And what is the result of that query? Well, there is some result set, and this result set class and object return value of execute query is slightly tricky to understand for the beginners. So don't be afraid if you don't understand everything, but I will give my best to explain. First of all, you might ask yourself, okay, we executed query for the database, and why we didn't receive the list? We need to receive a list of books, right? And then we can say list.get0, if you remember, and that's a first book, and so on and so on. Well, the thing is, database cannot return you objects because there is no such a thing as object in the database. Database has rows instead of objects because database is not object oriented whatever. It's not object oriented. It's a row and table oriented. So the best database can do is to give you a textual file. So database for this query will give you something similar to this. I mean, you can imagine that it looked like this. Some textual file where you can see one row of the database in this format, let's say, where you can see this column has this and this column has this, and that's it. Take a note that you can receive multiple books, but also if you go with some, let's say where ASBN equals, and then you say something which doesn't exist, something like this, you won't receive any book, right? So you need to check this result set. Is there a next element? So is there any book in this result set? And that's any next book exists. So if next book exists, then I would like to take from the result set. We are just writing a bad code now. We will improve it later, how it should be. So give me the column named ESBN, and this is our ESBN. So we gave the column name ESBN, and take a note that we in advance knew that that column is of type string, right? That's why we said get string. For example, for the author ID, we know that that is an integer, right? So we need to say get int, and then we can say author ID. Take a note that actually author ID in our database is not an integer, but it's string. And I noticed this error that I made during the filming of this video. And funnily enough, this will work, as you will see. Why it will work? Well, because SQL returns a string, so all data about all books is one big string, and Java will try to take column name author ID, and it will take the value of that column and it will try to cast that to integer. And if it succeeds, everything will be fine. In our case, it will succeed simply because author ID is a number, but we can put some letters in author ID because our author ID is defined as string in the database. So if our author ID is, let's say, 123A, then here we will have an error here on this getInt, just to mention. Okay, so we have ESBN and author ID, but how do we have ESBN and author ID of books? Because we received 2 books from the database. You remember? We wanted all fields from book, and we can see that we have 2 books here. Well, if we want to move to next book, then we need to call this next again. So if we go something like this, please go to next, and then we can say second book exists if second book exists. We can do the same thing here. This really looks like a loop, and it is a loop. We will modify this code just to show that this works. So first record is, and let's give it a try. Run. Okay, very interesting exception. It says no suitable driver found for this URL, right? And now it's very interesting thing to say. We mentioned that there are multiple SQL databases: Postgres, MySQL, Oracle. It makes sense that Java didn't include the drivers for all of those databases inside the Java core, because that will require to add even more databases, some NoSQL databases and drivers for everything, and that's a big mess. In the same fashion that Windows does not include drivers for NVIDIA graphic cards, and then for all models of graphic cards, and then for all models of motherboards, and so on and so on. So when you install Windows, after that you need to install drivers for your NVIDIA graphic card, for your, I don't know, some external hardware that you have, and so on and so on. In the same fashion, we need to install our driver. So you can go to postgresql.org download, and here you can pick the Java 8 because that's the newest driver. And this is fine, don't be afraid that Java 8 is too old. So you click download and you will have one jar file. And that is a driver for your JDBC. So you go here, you go to project structure. This is how it's at your place. So you go to dependencies, and then you find that you go jars or directories, and you find your jar there. Okay, my jar is located here. This is left on the default. Compile, you say okay, and then you run your code. Take a look at this. We have ESBN and author. Maybe even we can add title as well. Okay, let's give it a try. Run. Yeah, those are the data from the database. We got it good. Now we have few things to fix. Okay, let's say a few important things. First of all, in some older versions of JDBC, you need to manually load your driver like this. This is a static method. It's red because it needs an exception. You can just go try catch and everything will be fine. And this is necessary in some older versions of JDBC. We are using new version of JDBC, so we don't need this one. Take a note that also if in our code, in new version of JDBC, you put this line, it won't hurt, so your program will still work properly, but it's not necessary. In new versions of JDBC, driver is loaded automatically if your Java can find a jar file that we just downloaded properly. Okay, the second thing is this next method not only tell you is next record present, but also it move internal cursor of this result set. And because of that, first time when you called next, you received first element. Then you called next again, and internal cursor is moved, so you got second element here. Take a note, for example, if you forgot to call next after first invocation of result set get string or get any data from string, you will receive an error. And that error will tell you result set not positioned properly, perhaps you need to call next. So before accessing data from your result set, you must call next method at least once. Okay, now we need to fix this and put a loop. So we want to read all elements till the end here in the result set, which means that we need while loop. While there is a next element, do this. And that's it. If you run your code, everything should be fine, just fine. So first time when you come here, next is true, and your result set is positioned on the first element of the result set. You get ESBN title and author of that first element, then you are here again. You call next, method returns true, yes, there is a next element in the result set, and cursor is moved to the second element, so you can get the ESBN title and author of the second element, and so on and so on. The last small thing to fix, okay, here we can log an error, so error is, and then we can say what the error is to see that in our console. We will see logging later in this tutorial, but for now we're logging just the console. The last important thing to notice is that this connection and statement, they have close methods. So you can close statement and close connection in the same fashion like reader and printer had in the tutorials when we learned about printing to the file, writing to the file and reading from the file. So those two, you can either try to manually close those resources, or much better idea is to do something like this. Declare those resources inside the try block, and then they will be closed automatically after try catch block is finished. Let's just give it a try. Works properly. You learned how to properly get the data from your database. Also, you can try to say where ESBN equals to, let's say ESBN equal something like this. Okay, run. Now you got only one, so it works properly. You connected your Java program to SQL database. Let's see how to do updates. Okay, the update is very simple, so we'll just comment this for a second and we will copy paste this. So we want to do something, but we want to execute update. And then we can say delete from book where ESBN equals something like this. And that book should be deleted in the database. Run. Our process is finished. Let's check the database. Okay, if we check, yeah, that book is deleted. So our delete statement was executed properly. Now, all operations that modify data, delete, update, and insert, you should do those operations with this execute update method. And all operations that are retrieving data, namely one operation select, you need to go with execute query, and then you should select and do whatever you got result set as a response, and that's it. So you learned basically everything that's important regarding connecting Java and database. In the next tutorial, let's learn more about database transactions, which is a very important topic in SQL databases and also in general. See you in the next video.